This session is called 4 Easy Steps for Reclaiming Your Life Without Quitting Your Job. My name is Bethany Abbott, and I work for a company called NS1. I'm the Technical Operations Manager there. So before I get into what I do and what my company does, let's talk about you. So you're here, maybe, because you wanted to go to a session and you got paged. During that session, or right before, you're hanging out in the hallway, in those cubes, working on something. Or you're sitting there right now, and you're like, am I gonna get paged in this session? I just saw you hold your phone. If you do get paged, I understand, I've been there. Maybe you're here because the last time you went to the movies, your phone went off and you missed some epic scene in Star Wars. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. Next Star Wars movie is coming out in December. My dog's named Ray, so I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So what I'm going to talk about today is how do you make that so you can have a life and you don't have to worry about those things anymore. Mandatory slide. So I work for a company called NS1. We're a traffic management company, which means that we do DNS services. So hopefully most of you have heard of DNS before, domain name services. We also route traffic based upon internet conditions. So we have our Pulsar product that says like, hey, if there's traffic going on somewhere, you don't want your customers to be sent there. All right, so a little bit about me. I joke that my background is always DNS. It's always DNS. So if you've seen the DNS haiku out there, that's like, it can't be DNS. No, it's not DNS. And then what's your problem? It's DNS. So it's always DNS. I even have stickers I can give out later that say, it's always DNS. So yeah, I know, you've been there. So what do? I'm the Technical Operations Manager at NS1. I started a little over 2 years ago. And I was brought in because they didn't have a team that was focused on monitoring, observability, incident management, any of that. It was just kind of haphazardly done. So I was brought on to make that team. So my team, I manage a team of 8. We are spread across the globe. So this nifty little map that our marketing team made me shows all of the places that my team members are. So you can tell we're pretty far spread out. We're across 5 time zones. So that brings its own set of challenges, which I can talk about. And if you have questions about that, I'll be happy to answer those. So when I started, the on-call process was terrible. You were on call for a week at a time, 24/7. So you interrupted your life. Even if you don't get paged, just the fact that you're on call and you can't go out with friends, you can't have a drink or multiple drinks if you want to, that is detrimental to people's lives. So that is something I wanted to change. I've worked in companies where it has been bad. So I took those practices and implemented them at NS1. Hopefully you all can go through these steps and implement these practices at your own companies. So now our on-call is 1 day a week, which means you can schedule your life around that 1 day. So mine used to be Tuesdays. I just wouldn't schedule dentist appointments on Tuesdays. And I know that's my day. I wouldn't work on major projects. And then with our team, we also, to cover weekends, what we do is we have a 12-hour on-call shift. So my first hire on my team was 12 hours offset of me. So my 3 a.m. was his 3 p.m. Because we all know everything breaks at 3 a.m. So we went down to 1 day, and then if you're on call the weekend, you get a comp day, which is something I feel like more companies need to implement. Even if you didn't have a crazy weekend, you could not go to a friend's party because you had to bring your laptop with you. So that is something we do at my company, is that we give you a comp day if it's your weekend on call. So our infrastructure is pretty large. We have 25 global points of presence, and we manage around 600 physical servers. So that's not even including virtual servers. We actually have bare metal in our POPs. So why do I know about this other than what I've done recently? Is before NS1, I worked at Dyn. You may have heard of Dyn. because we got DDoS attacked about 3 years ago. This week was the 3-year terrible anniversary. That's what that map is from, is how impacting it was to customers. So during that incident, I was the network operations lead, and I was also incident commander. So that is the one day that I learned the most about burnout and on-call and incident management. I also got a nifty cup that you can see from the Hug Up Brigade that says I saved the internet. I tell people my brother does not work in technology, and so like one of his customers came into his work and said the internet's broken on this day, and he said, don't worry, my sister's fixing it. Little did he know, I actually was fixing it, and I have the cup to prove it. All right, so I'm guessing a lot of people have seen this. This is Fine Dog. I have a stuffed animal of him. Oops, let me go. So, see this? What is this slide doing? So, this is fine. Everything's going on. Your infrastructure is exploding. But, that's just how it is. We kind of accept that fact. Well, I'm here to tell you, no, this is not fine. What can we do to make sure we are not living that this is fine dog life? So, I'm going to do a quick exercise. Can everybody raise their hand who is on call or manages a team that's on call? Okay, most of the room. Wait, keep your hand raised. Go ahead, put it back up. I'm going to raise my hand. Keep your hand raised if you've been burnt out in your career. Okay, as you can see, no one put their hand down. So this is something that we live. You can put your hands down now. Don't get burnt out from raising your hand. So this is something people live with every day. So currently, this was a startling statistic to me. So currently, when people took this survey, 57% of people in technology felt burnt out. So more than half of people on your team, your company, your employees are burnt out right now. So what are we gonna do about that? So this slide, don't read it. This slide is burnout. Couple things to note on here is that it's actually recognized by who? So the World Health Organization back in May came out with information, and they actually classify it as a diagnosis now. Other important things to note is that nearly half of people say they have trouble managing their stress, and they need help to learn how to do that. And also, super startling number is more than a third of people feel their job physically or mentally harms their well-being. So I'm going to give you a 4-step process that you can go through, take back to your companies, implement some of these to make sure that your team and yourself are not one of those terrible statistics. So step 1, stop having a quarterback. Here's what I mean by this. If your incident management policy says the word quarterback in it, please go back to your office and remove it. Couple of reasons why. When you get to have a global team, the word quarterback does not make sense if your team is outside of the US or doesn't watch American football. Also, you should just get sports jargon out of incident management policies. So go back, remove it. Call it owner, call it lead, we call it incident commander. Whatever works for your company, just don't use quarterback. Second step to that, what I mean by this, is that everyone on your team should feel empowered to run an incident. How do you get there? When you have new employees that are like, I have to go to what we call the red channel when incidents are happening, CEO's there, CTO's there, all these eyes are on me, what do I do? So what we do is we make sure you have someone to help you out when you're new, who gets on a Zoom with you and says, here's the steps. We have a very documented incident management policy so that way you don't have to think about how often do I update this channel? What do I need to put in this ticket? It's just written out for you. So everyone on your team should be trained and empowered. Talk about it often. We just did a meeting about what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change. So make sure everybody on your team can run an incident. Step 2, Build processes with other teams in your company. So this is an example of what our VictorOps rotations look like. So as you can see on there, it's not just operations. We have every team on the engineering org is on call. So my team is able to page whoever they need to when an incident occurs. Another thing, that we have is that our C-level and VPs are also on call. So what that means is we have a sort of break glass in case of emergency page. If things are going crazy, it's a Sev 1 incident. Sev 1's the worst at my company. Sev 1 incident, and you don't want a bunch of people coming on and saying like, oh, I just saw this happen, somebody complained. You want to reach out to them and say, this is what's going on. This is what I need you and your organization to do, be it the marketing team replying to tweets or the sales team knowing how to respond to their prospects when they write in. So we make sure we can reach out to everyone. Another thing is our customer success team. So they're the ones that are getting those phone calls saying, this is going on, I just got an alert for your monitoring products, and it caused me to get an alert, like, what the heck is going on? So you wanna make sure your customer success team or tech support team, whatever it's called at your company, is very aware of the incident management and what is expected of them. As well as I talked about having your developers on call. This got some tension, and I said, hey, I want to put everybody on call. And it got some pushback, but it ended up working out because I was like, if you're not on call, then your product's gonna be broken if my team doesn't know how to fix it. So getting that ownership, it's a little difficult at first, but getting that buy-in. And then, so these are our customer success questions. So we have to answer these for every incident that we have. So we think about customer impact immediately when an incident occurs. It should not be an afterthought during your incident management process. So we have these questions. You can read them on there. But we want to make sure we are able to deliver that information. What happened? Why won't it happen again? So that way our CS team can reply to those customers post-status as needed. All right, step 3. It's building actionable alerts through VictorOps that don't cause alert fatigue to your team. So, if you don't know what alert fatigue is, this is an example from nursing. So this survey that was done by nurse.org says that 72 to 99% of alarms are false, and they are just completely ignored. We have startling statistics, I haven't done them myself other than at my team, of what are the unactionable alerts. What are those alerts that your team acts, puts their phone down, continues on? So I'm gonna talk about how do you find out what those are and what do you do with that information. So that way we don't have alert fatigue on our on-call teams. So these are some examples I'm gonna walk through of how my team uses VictorOps to make sure that we're making on-call not as terrible as it was in the past or at other companies. So the first thing on here, I don't have a slide about it, but predictable on-call schedules. So I talked about that a little bit, is your team should be able to plan their life. Being on call, we know, can be terrible. So let's make sure people know when they're on call, know what their weekend is on call, know what their comp day is for their weekend, so that way they can enjoy their life. And then the next step we want to make sure is that alerts are easy to acknowledge. So most of my team is remote to me, so I spend my life in Slack all day long. So we want to make sure it's easy to acknowledge an alert when it comes in. Alerts are interrupt-based. They interrupt whatever you're doing. You are not sitting there just waiting for it. So we use the Slack integration, so that way we can just act it right away. We can paste it in another channel, copy that link and say like, here's what I'm looking at. Can I have people, if I need it, whatever. It's easy to find information. So that's how I do it often. There's push notifications, SMS, web, whatever works for you, but we need to make sure it's one click and easy for your teams. So links to runbooks. When I started at NS1, I said, hey, where's your runbooks? And they said, runbooks? What's that? And I was horrified, and I realized why I was brought on. So I worked with my team to make runbooks. So now every alert that comes in, we have a runbook attached to it that says, here's the relevant dashboard showing you this problem. Here's the steps to take. And then most importantly, I find, is the escalation section. So if these steps don't work, who do I page? Because that's something that is not often thought about. And we need to make sure we have that so our teams aren't just struggling, they have somebody to contact. There's a variety of different ways you can do that right in VictorOps. So you can use their rules engine to add runbook links or dashboard links. And then depending upon where your alerts are coming from, you may be able to add it there as well. We have a runbook template. So we designed that so it is easy to make runbooks. Everybody knows this is a template you use. Here's what must be included in your runbook. So we make that easy for people. Next thing I want to talk about is reporting. So I know there was a session earlier today about actionable and unactionable alerts. So this is how we find some information about alerts that are coming in. So there's some nifty reporting tools in VictorOps that allow you to see the number of incidents that came in, and what was the server or service that was identified with this. So you can see frequency of alerts. Another feature that I've found interesting is that you can see on-call workload. So it shows you who is getting the most alerts and around what times are people getting these alerts. So you can say, is there some process that's always running at 10 a.m. on Mondays that is causing us a problem? So not only just in reporting, but on my team, we do an audit. So we have everybody during one of their on-call shifts record what of their alerts are actionable and unactionable. Because there's an element of the people aspect. What I might consider to be an unactionable alert, maybe somebody else is actually taking action on. So let's identify what those are. Are our thresholds wrong? Are we reporting on a service that used to behave a certain way and somebody was like, hey, we need to catch that log, but now it's highly available. So that log doesn't need to page us that, hey, this showed up. So we go through and do this internal audit. We need to take action on this data. So it's great to look at these pretty graphs and say, hey, that's noisy, my team ignores this. But you need to take action on this data, and everybody on your team should feel empowered to take action on this. So we often talk about like, hey, this alert became noisy. What do we do about it? And if there's an alert you don't need anymore, delete it. Just get rid of it. So those are the first 3 steps. We're going to talk about step 4. So step 4 is about chaos engineering and Wargames. So some of you may have heard of chaos engineering. There's talks about it. There's plenty of information online. At my company, we call it Wargames, like the old movie where everybody, you know that movie, sit around, see those crazy things. So we call it Wargames, which also makes a fun calendar invite. And people are like, what am I missing out on? So, yes, that is a person dressed up as a snow leopard. In Japan and China, the zoos do this activity. You can look it up online, find all kinds of pictures. I picked the most, oops. What is going on with my slides? Sorry about that. So I picked the most customer-friendly one. And don't you love technology when it just like decides not to do what you want it to do? So we DDoS ourselves. So we take a pop offline and we have somebody be the attacker and then somebody else be the defender. They don't communicate with each other. So that person who is a defender needs to figure out what is being attacked, how is the attack happening, and how are we going to defend that. So that's what we do. We also do incident drills. So this is helpful with new employees learning how to manage an incident. So we do incident drills that we have pretend something happened, like what happens if you lose your primary database? And then walk through the steps of how would I restore this? Can't actually do that kind of thing in production, but we're able to isolate certain things in our staging environment and able to break it in certain ways. This is like auto-advancing or something. So, break things on purpose. That is my advice to you when you go back to your company. Figure out what you can break, and then figure out how your team can fix that when that occurs. So, that way, you're ready when your next snow leopard escapes from the zoo. All right, step 5. So I know I said 4, everything said 4, but it's 5 steps because nothing ever goes according to plan. So step 5 is around living your life. So don't be attached to your laptop or your phone, waiting to see if you're gonna get paged, waiting to see what's gonna break, checking Slack. You need to live your life. We need to decrease that crazy burnout rate of 57% of people feeling it right now. So I say, train for a half marathon. I've done 2 in the past 3 weeks because I'm insane. Teach kids to code, give back. I find it really interesting to go to schools and talk to students and find out, are they interested in technology? If not, why not? I found a lot of students think that it is sitting behind a computer and programming all day long. Where my job, I don't type lines of code. I talk to people all day long. I solve problems. So teaching kids to code, I've done Girls Make Games, which is geared towards young women, and teaching them about technology. So this is my live your life slide. I asked my team for their hobbies. So I got a list from my team of some of the things that they enjoy, and I got pictures. So one thing I found interesting is when I asked my team for these pictures, that's me also with my medal, is that so many of these were outside. They're not worried about having self-service and getting paged. And instead, they're living their lives. So when I saw this, I was like, all right, I must be doing something right if my team is telling me these are my hobbies, I can disconnect and be outside. All right, so now I'm going to recap. So here's the 5 steps, not 4. So my call to action to you is when you go back to your companies, look at how you can implement some of these, all of these steps. Go check what are people feeling burnt out about at your company. Delete that quarterback from any documentation. If you are the person that is always running an incident, we need to figure out why. That should not be you. It should be a shared responsibility. So stop having a quarterback. Build processes with other teams. If your devs are not on call, you should put them on call. As well as thinking about customer impact and making sure that the people talking to customers are getting the information that they need when an incident is occurring. Make sure you have actionable alerts. Take action on the unactionable alerts. Don't just ack it and move on. Talk to your team about what is actionable and what is not. Go pretend a snow leopard escaped in whatever your infrastructure is. So use the principles of chaos engineering or Wargames. DDoS yourselves. See what happens. Make sure you're not impacting customers. Don't want to make anybody's executives mad at this talk. But break something. See how you fix it. See how your team responds to it. Think about the communication around that response. And then number 5, think of a hobby that you've been like, man, I wish I could do that, but I feel like I'm always working, checking Slack. Think about that hobby that you want to do and do it. When you implement practices like this, you're able to go enjoy that thing you always wanted to do. If you want to train for a half marathon, feel free to talk to me. It's crazy, but it's a lot of fun. And live your life, because you're not sitting there afraid things are going to go on, sitting there afraid you're going to get paged in this session or in other sessions or on a plane. One of the best things I can say to this is that shortly after my team got built up, the CEO and I were talking, and he was like, I'm taking this flight to Asia. I'm going to be on a plane for 16 hours, and I'm not worried about if an incident's going to occur, how it's going to be handled. So when he said that to me, I was like, okay, my team's doing their job if the CEO is not suddenly concerned anymore about what will happen if he's disconnected for an extended period of time. All right, so get into the Q&A section. If you have questions about how I've implemented some of this, how you can implement it in your own environments, my Twitter handle is Bethany R. Abbott, 2 B's, 2 T's. Feel free to tweet to me. My email is babbott@ns1.com. I have business cards too. And these slides get posted on .conf's website a couple weeks from now, as well as a recording of this presentation and all the other presentations you went to. So, anybody have questions? Yes. So the question was, do we DDoS ourselves in production? So we have a unique advantage where we have so many points of presence that we can take one down and it doesn't impact our customers. So we take it, we BGP down it, take it out of rotation, and then we DDoS it. Yeah. Okay, so the question was, I want to make sure I heard it correctly, identifying roadblocks in step 1 and how to get the leadership on board with that. Okay, so when I started, there was one person that was the quarterback. That's you, okay. And that person got on a plane to Brazil and something broke majorly. And that made us go, well, he's not around. How do we fix this? So even though it was terrible at the time, that opened people's eyes to like, he is our quarterback. We need to get rid of that. So I hope you don't go through that and you're on a plane back to somewhere and something major happens. But unfortunately, sometimes that's what it takes. I've also found if you are that point person, is making it so why are you that point person, and seeing who else you can get to become that point person with you, and get people to trust that that other person also knows what's going on, as well as the whole team. So having a team that I didn't get paged once while I was here, and I only looked at Slack to be like, hey guys, how's everything going? And they were like, it's good. Well, of course we got everything. This is the team you built. And I was like, wow, that's great, like that I can disconnect. But I also had a conference I went to at my last company where I sat in the corner because we were getting DDoSed. So it's a process to go through, but being that person who you're like, who else can I train to get to where I'm not the only one, is the best advice I have for that. Yeah.
So right now we're on 2-week rotations. It's killing us. But the reason behind it is because sometimes incidents will leak into the following days. I'm curious how you handle that with just 1-day rotation.
Sure. I'm going to walk down here because I feel weird talking. So if we have incidents that are multi-day, multi-shift, so our on-call shifts right now are 12 hours because we have the team in Vietnam. So we're able to pass those off. So we have a strict handoff point where whoever, if I was the person on call, I get on a Zoom with the next person and say, here's where this stands. Or if like our SRE team is working on it, they also are able to hand it off. So we have very clear handoffs, so that way you can go to bed or whatever you need to do. And we're able to, we've had those incidents that have gone like multi-day, but we're making sure people are signing off, going to bed, so they can come in the next day refreshed. I have worked for not an NS1, but previously a 36-hour slot. And by the time I feel like you get to like not even like hour 12, your value of what you can contribute just plummets. So making sure you have somebody that you can hand that off to.
Follow-up questions. Let's under the assumption that there isn't silos in your team then.
So should I say like, are there silos? We try to break those with documentation. So when I first started, it was very siloed. But we look at like the same thing, like why is this only the person that can fix this problem? Do they know something that other people don't know? It can be a bit of a tedious process, like, okay, what are you doing? Let me get on a Zoom with you and write down what you're doing. But I've found the more documentation, the more runbooks you have, the easier it is to maintain that balance. Yeah, no problem. Anybody else? Okay. Then we are good. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope you can go back to your office and implement some of this.